Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome back. We are here to talk about our racial justice in Islam, opening our hearts series. And we're going to talk today about celebration in Islam and all of the different ways that we can celebrate our faith and how the faith tells us that it is just a joy to be here, to be alive, to be able to practice, to be able to get closer and closer to Allah. So we know a special guest, but I just kind of want to recap a little bit about what we have done in the past. We had so many wonderful speakers, starting with Dr. Nisa Islam Muhammad, and she gave us the wonderful story about the pleading woman, Allah, and the agency that she had. And then we went to Dr. Bilal Ansari from Williams College, and he was really giving us an understanding about a practical matter in prison iniquity and how there are women that want to practice their faith also taking on agency and what we can do to support them. So that was a racial justice issue as well. And we had Brother Saifullah, who is our community religious liaison at Smith, and he gave us information about Blackness in America, as well as diversity in identity, and talking about the different ways that we can work together that have been demonstrated over the years in our faith. And of course, we had Dr. Jonathan A.C. Brown, and he gave us a great piece of his research where we were talking about is Islam anti-Black? And he was answering those questions for us, and we understanding that it is not the religion, but it is the way that the religion can get practiced and the cultural biases and influences that come in. And so today we are here, and we talked to hear Wadud. Oh yes, and to hear gave us such a beautiful understanding from different influences that happened to her in the past, and from her childhood and from her children's childhood. So now we're here, and I'm just going to go ahead and pass it on to Heba. She's going to talk about our special guest.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome again. Today we have another amazing guest, and our guest today is Dr. Tamara Gray. And let me just give you a little bit of background on who Dr. Tamara is. Dr. Tamara Gray is a founder of Rabata, an organization dedicated to promoting positive cultural change through creative educational experiences. She holds a doctorate in leadership from the University of St. Thomas, a master's degree in curriculum theory and instruction from Temple University, and spent 20 years studying traditional and classical Islamic sciences, Quran, and Arabic in Damascus, Syria. Dr. Gray worked in the field of education for 25 years before moving into the nonprofit world. She is now both the executive director of Rabata and its chief spirituality officer. Her work includes the daily nitty-gritty of product design, as well as the support and mentorship of hundreds of women around the world. She is the instructor for more than 10 subjects at Rabat, teaches Rabata teens, and contributes to curriculum development. Dr. Gray is also an author and translator. Her publications range from several culturally appropriate English language curriculum programs to translations of sacred texts. She has authored two books, Joy Jots, Exercises for a Happy Heart, and Project Lena, Bringing Our Whole Selves to Islam, and co-translated مختصر الجامع في السيرة النبوية, written by Samira Zayed, or compendium of the collection of sources on al-Sira Nabawiyya by Samira Zayed. In addition to her work at Rabata, Dr. Gray sits on the No Usury Board, an organization dedicated to giving small, no-interest loans to those who are in need. and the Collegeville Institute's Interreligious Fellows Program, working to develop educational programming for faith leaders around social justice issues. She also serves as both faculty and academic council member for the Islamic Seminary of America, teaches at the United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities, and is a senior fellow at the Yaqeen Institute. She has recently joined the Fiqh Council of North America, in addition to her all other responsibilities. Dr. Tamara is a mother of three, grandmother of two, an avid reader, and a lover of cultures, people, coffee, and food. And I've met her personally before in Sweden, and she's such an amazing person and has a wonderful personality.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and admit her in right now. We'll get to meet Dr. Tamara Gray. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum salam. So good to see you, mashallah.
MashaAllah, it's so nice seeing you again.
It's been a long time.
Yes, yes, subhanAllah.
Good. How do you all know each other?
You go ahead.
You tell the story.
Well, we met in Sweden.
Yes.
Yeah, in what's it called?
It was Umeå, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
City, yes, and it was an Islamic conference for Muslim women in Sweden.
That she ran, that Hibatullah ran, and like she just found me online, I think, and sent an email, and then we went. It was so fun. It was really lovely. It was very nicely run, very organized. It was really interesting to be there and meet the women. And it's a northern part of Sweden, which I didn't really realize until I went there, really how far it was from Stockholm. And it was really cool. Like until now, I talk about all the birch trees in the town and how I learned that there's something called birch tree syrup, like not just maple syrup. There's birch syrup. That was cool.
Yeah, that tastes a little different, huh?
I don't know. I didn't actually taste it. I just heard about it. Yeah. But then also like the whole Ramadan thing that is the issue in what is this town called again? Umeå. About like I remember that how much we were talking about the council that had come and set iftar at like 11:30, and how in January you fast from 9 in the morning till 1:30 in the afternoon. So that's kind of stuff. Yeah, it was really nice, mashallah.
It's really good to have you come and be with us, Dr. Gray. We are doing, as you already know, a series in racial justice in Islam, opening our hearts at Smith College. And we have students that have been tuning in asynchronously to the different special guests that we've had. And this time we are focusing on celebration of Islam. And we thought that with all of your vast experience, it seems like you've been teaching, you have studied classical Islam, you have now been some years in the nonprofit world, you work with communities, you work with women, and there must be so much that you can point to help us celebrate Islam. What is your thought around that subject area?
Well, I wrote a book called Joy Jots, and it's the whole purpose of that book was the idea that I think faith should inspire joy. And so in inspiring joy is part of celebration. Why do we want to celebrate? You know, what when we think about what we celebrate holidays, we celebrate people, we celebrate accomplishments, we celebrate, these are the kinds of things we celebrate. And in the measure of life and in the measure of the things that happen in our lives, the celebration of a relationship with God, the celebration of an accomplishment in faith, like fasting Ramadan, like memorizing some Quran, like just learning how to read Arabic. maybe just praying one prayer because someone has been struggling. The celebration of these things helps us to fight against, if you will, the sort of oppressive nature of shaitan in our lives. And what I mean by that is that there are many doors to shaitan, many doors to negativity, many doors to getting down on ourselves and feeling like we're not worth it and feeling like, oh, life is so hard and all of those. But to close those doors, we have to open the doors of positivity. We have to open the doors of celebrating small accomplishments, of celebrating a relationship with God, of celebrating knowing and learning more about the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muhammad. All of the different aspects of faith, the celebration of them, to me, it's very important, because the opposite of celebration isn't fun. and and if we're not going to be celebrating these things, then we're stuck. Then where are we? Like, where are we in this world that is full of trials and difficulty and all sorts of things? We have to be intentional, I think, about celebrating.
So we have to celebrate even the small feats that we accomplish. And it's so easy, like with human nature, for us to focus on the negative and the things we haven't quite done right or our challenges, instead of, as you said, getting up. And if you have been struggling with a particular area, such as prayer or fasting or charity, doing good deeds, do them, to actually look at it and be, grateful that you were able to make that happen for yourself. And we know how many rewards that we get when we do something good, that Allah really does reward us. So what would you say would be a good formula to be able to stay in the mindset where you can be positive and you can celebrate even the small things that you achieve?
Well, in Islamic spirituality, there's this concept of, let's call them stages of positivity. That's my own phrase, though. And we have the idea of shukr, which is gratefulness. And the idea, the one that comes first is sabr. Sabr is often translated as patience. But I think there's a better word for it, because when we say patience in English, we think about standing in line. Be patient and wait your turn. Be patient until, the phone gets answered. Be patient until you get your vaccine. Be patient. But sabr is not about waiting. Sabr is about being able to deal with the hard stuff with what I like to call a thin-lipped smile. If you look at pictures of, I don't know, women in the 1800s, around when cameras first started to be a little bit more popular, there aren't a lot of smiles. But every once in a while, it just wasn't part of the culture, but every once in a while, you find a woman, I'm fascinated by these pictures, as you can tell. You'll find a woman who has there's a light smile on her face. And I call it a thin-lipped smile, because I feel like I can see, and of course, Allahu Alam, Allah knows, but I feel like I can see behind that smile the hardship of living. There's a lot of hardship in many women's lives. There's a lot of hardship in many lives. But when we're looking at these early pictures, very often there is a lot of hardship behind that light smile on her face. And that type of a smile makes me think of sabr. This ability to smile, not a silly smile, not a camera, just for the camera smile, just to pretend I'm okay, but a true sabr smile, a true smile of, yeah, it's hard, but I see my blessings. I know they're there and I'm okay. So that's level one on this this sort of steps of Islamic spirituality when it comes to positive levels of positivity. Level two is shukr, or gratefulness and thankfulness. And so at that level, we start to be grateful we start to be able to identify really clearly and notice the things that are bringing us ease and notice the things that make us happy. Notice the things that we can be thankful for, the things that maybe we otherwise take for granted. Alhamdulillah, I'm grateful that I mean, there's a whole list of, we can talk about that for a long time, but from the very tiny things of I can breathe to, well, that's not too tiny in this day and age, is it? But maybe the things like my fingers all work, or, if you smash your finger in the door, it's like the worst thing. And so the days we don't smash our finger in the door, we don't think about how great it is to have fingers that are working. And so that's what that level is, just really being able to remember the things that we're grateful for and not take them for granted. And the top level is rida, which is, it's poorly translated often as contentedness, which doesn't sound very wonderful. I like to think of it as like a bubbling internal joy, where rida is, I'm okay, I'm happy, I'm happy, I love God, and I'm confident in that relationship. And even as I see so much difficulty, and even as I can grieve, still underneath that is a bubbling internal joy that keeps that spot warm, even as I see really hard things. And because of that warmth, that gives me the strength to be able to go out and do something to help that really hard thing, or maybe this more personal grief, to be able to ride the wave of grief and manage the grief, knowing that on the other side, there's happiness and joy. So that's not a very practical answer to your question, but as a sort of a beginning, when you think of things like that, then in a more practical way, we can begin the celebration by beginning it with sabr, beginning it with, okay, I'm going to learn how not to make my go-to emotion anger, or my go-to emotion frustration. Instead, I'm going to work on making my go-to emotion forbearance or internal strength. I can do this. This is okay. I'm gonna be able to do this with Allah's strength, with God, with my connection to Allah. And through that's where we start to think about, there's little accomplishments like, okay, maybe I'm not praying at all. Or now I started praying Fajr every day. Or maybe I was praying but never made any Fajr prayer on time. Today I made it on time. These kinds of things are going to bring me into that space of sabr, like the one who just made butter for the first time. Or something more complicated, like, or to figure it out. One of the things in early history, wherever you go, is this idea, especially when poverty is involved. Actually, that's not even historical. That's today. That's any time. Whenever there's poverty involved, it's about figuring out how to make do and how to manage with whatever is there. And in spiritual poverty, one of the ways that we move from spiritual poverty to spiritual enrichment is to make do with what we have where we are, and use what we have to help us get to that next place where we start to enrich those feelings and increase the spiritual wealth, the spiritual nutrition of our inner selves. So maybe that's too out there, but
No, I don't think so. Not at all. It was so rich, your answer. And a lot of times our students are probably in the area where maybe they're at Sabor, struggling with that, and trying to figure out how to be more resilient. Do they have the right to feel a certain way?
yeah.
What would it look like if they did get to these different levels, and how do they do it? So these practical ways that you're talking about, they all seem to be a mental kind of way of thinking, of being, and no one can do it for you. It's like you have to make a decision. And so what are some of the things that they can do to feed them in that direction?
Okay. Yeah. So before I answer that particular part of the question, I just want to add a little piece around the idea of no one can do it for us. That's 100% true. No one can do it for us. However, one like tip to make it easier is to have good suhbah or companionship. Because we really have a tendency to feed off of the people that we hang around. Everyone does. And so when we are intentional, and our friends are going to be our friends, our coworkers are going to be our coworkers, our classmates are our classmates. Some of them we're going to really love, and some of them we're going to be like, eh. But to be intentional about creating a community of people who have accomplished the spiritual level you hope for. That kind of companionship is really helpful. And I truly believe it's okay if it's online, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't have people around me like that. Well, the virtual world is real. These are real people, real in relationships that we can grow online. So finding someone, I don't mean someone to mentor you. That sounds like work, oh my God, I gotta like think about this. No, just the hanging out to a degree, the being exposed to the way they're thinking. That kind of suhbah, that kind of companionship is a help. Now, however, you are absolutely right that help is an influence, but we can only do this for ourselves. Like if we want to grow, just like a diet, if somebody wants to go on a diet, unfortunately, we don't get to tell someone else, listen, could you just stop eating cake and then I'll be okay? That would be great if I could like eat all the cake and then, I'd still lose weight because someone else stopped. We have to decide what we're putting into our spiritual selves. And that includes both. We want to avoid negative things and we want to increase positive things. And that's easy to think about because we are so good at dieting. In this diet culture that we live in, we really understand that we have to fill our bodies with vitamins. And we have to be careful of chemicals. We have to be careful of extra sugar. There's a lot of articles out there that tell us that worrying about fat is just it's just a conspiracy so that the sugar people can sell us sugar. But that's not my area, so I will leave that to the nutritionists. But spiritually as well, I do think that we have this romantic idea, that if we do certain things, that we do lots of them, we're going to be fine. Just like this thing, cut out all fat or cut out all carbohydrates is the new thing, and you're going to be fine. Always we need a balance. Unless there's a health issue, in which case then that's a different thing with the body. We always need a balance of nutrition, and same spiritually. So I don't suggest to anyone that anyone tries to do anything really extreme, but rather really think about yourself. So step one, let me be really practical. Step one, know yourself. Find out who you are. Are you an extrovert that really likes to hang around people? Well, then maybe you need to find some of your people that you can get together for worship with. Because now you're going to nourish yourself in many ways. And you'll want to do that because as an extrovert, you want to go to that thing. Hello, extrovert. I totally, If you're an introvert, now that, by the way, footnote, as an extrovert, that doesn't mean that you don't have to do your prayers alone. Sometimes you have to. But like in that road of thinking, what am I going to do that's going to be really practical to increase my spiritual health? If you're an introvert, that might just sound like a nightmare. Oh my God, I have to go be with people to worship. That's just not my thing. So for an introvert, you want to not make those arrangements, preferably. And again, sometimes you may have to. But you want to not make those arrangements and instead maybe create a beautiful place and space at home that has some candles, something that you love, maybe a beautiful quote framed, maybe a brand new prayer carpet, maybe some special perfume. I have a bottle of perfume I bought in Kuwait that I spray all over myself when I'm going to pray. And it makes me think of spiritual times in my life that I've been around that good suhbah I talked about earlier, and it just brings me, because that's what smells do, brings me to another place. So we want to know yourself. And based on knowing yourself, you want to start creating intentional practices and not to be overwhelmed. I also want to say that we have a tendency to be all or nothing. And Islam is not Islam is not a religion of all or nothing, and our spiritual selves cannot handle all or nothing. Just like our bodies, it can't be either we're eating a dozen donuts or we eat nothing. Neither is going to make us healthy. And so spiritually, taking those intelligent steps, knowing the self, and then being intentional about creating experiences for ourselves, along with step 3, which we already said, which is being intentional about creating companionship for ourselves. This, along with really thinking about the metaphor of diet, I think is helpful. Not to give a nod to diet culture, because it's a very unfortunate thing. So I don't mean here the diet culture when I say diet, but I mean the nutrition and the beauty of like, it's so fun to eat something delicious. In the same way, it's so much fun spiritually to take in something spiritually delicious. And so to start intentionally making those things, like, make it beautiful for yourself. You can do that. You can, if Quran is a struggle for you, go take a fun class with some people to learn how to read Arabic. Come to an online masjid. We have one at Rabata, the Rabata virtual masjid. Do something with your sisters that are close by as we move out of COVID, and you can spend time together, inshallah, and etc. Like, look for those delicious nutritional things that you can do. And then the other side is being very intelligent and responsible about realizing that what we fill ourselves with that is of negativity is going to affect us, even when we have to. Like, sometimes we have to. I had an experience the other day where a young woman needed some help from me, and I spent a good amount of time with her, and I went home and I sat on the couch. Whoa. I was just like, I was absolutely spent. Does that mean I wish I didn't spend time with that young woman? Of course not. I'm quite happy I was able to do that. But recognize that you need repairs, or how do we say this? Like, if you are, you need to repair, heal. What were you?
Replenishment.
Replenish. Yes, exactly. And so take the time for that. Maybe you had a really difficult finals time. Maybe what you're taking in is not in your hands, but it's something that is heavy and hard. Right now, I live in Minnesota. I spent a good number of hours yesterday watching the trial here of the policeman, Chauvin. And it was very heavy watching. I felt a responsibility to watch, but it was also difficult. It was very difficult. And so, notice I'm not saying don't watch it. I mean, I felt a responsibility to watch it and to have an understanding of how these cases are going. I actually was really grateful it was online so I could watch it. But at the same time, know that these things are affecting us, and we shouldn't become numb to it. But we don't want to be numb. We want to know that it affects us. So we want to do something to replenish the hurt, something to manage the hurt. And I also wanted to say a footnote, because I don't want to be misunderstood to be saying that I think that we can never have grieving feelings, or that we never have what we might categorize as negative feelings. I really believe that grief is a positive thing. It's a real emotion, and we can't have grief unless we've had love. You can't miss someone unless you love someone. So these feelings that are not, let's say, fun feelings, maybe they're not fun feelings. They're part and parcel of being human. And there's joy in them, even though that may sound like sort of a paradox. But there's joy in knowing that you've loved someone enough to miss them so deeply. And that's even if they just live somewhere else, or in the case of their death, to miss them in this dunya so deeply and hope to be reunited in the akhirah. So these feelings are real and important, and I don't want to be misunderstood when I'm talking about celebrating and joy to be indicating that I think that life is never going to have hardship. It always is, but that we can still celebrate within that. We're celebrating something else. And the last thing I'll say about intake, there are sometimes things we intake ourselves. Sometimes there's addictions. Sometimes there's pornography addiction, alcohol, drugs. Sometimes it's maybe not full-on pornography addiction, but just R-rated movies or Netflix for hours and hours and hours, or a lot of violent gaming, these things affect us. They affect us, and we need to know that they are depleting our stores of spiritual strength. Some of it is sinful, like pornography is sinful to watch. Some of it is harmful, but maybe it wouldn't be categorized as sinful. Drinking alcohol is a sin in Islam. Overeating, it's not going to be the same kind of sin, but we know that sitting down with 24 donuts, a box of Oreos, a bag of chips, and a box of popcorn, 3 pizzas, and a bottle of Coke is going to make us feel bad. And it's not only going to make us feel bad because it's going to hurt our stomach, it's also going to make us feel bad because it's just not spiritually healthy either. So we also want to recognize that we are in control of what we put into our bodies, through our eyes, through our ears, through our mouth, even through our hands, in any way. And all of these things come to help either make us a person who can easily celebrate these joys and walk on the way of sabr and shukr and rida, or make us a person who's really struggling even to get to that place of that little smile, even in difficulty, that we're just stuck under the, kind of in our feet are stuck in the cement and it's starting to harden and we're trying to move them and they're just stuck. We can't move our feet and we don't know what to do. But what we can do, there's lots of things we can do. And so we just need to be really honest, know ourselves, and at the end of that, be honest with ourselves about where we are and what we are doing to affect our own feelings.
Well, since we're talking about knowing ourselves and that we most of the time take our blessings for granted, I'd like for you to give us a small reminder of what kind of privileges / blessings that we have as Muslims in general, and as Muslims in the American society particularly.
Well, I'm a convert, and so the one blessing I like to really remind non-verts of, that's not my own word, non-vert, I really wish it was because I think it's adorable, but one of our students in Rabata made that up. So one thing I like to remind non-verts is that the absolute blessing of knowing how your Creator wants to be worshipped is enormous. There is a place of emptiness, confusion, pain. If you are a person who wants to know God, wants to worship God, and has no idea how to do it, or knows in between you and yourself that you're just making it up as you go along. And the blessing of being in a faith, and I understand for some young people that might not sometimes feel like a blessing because it feels like a lot of work, but I really want to implore upon you to understand that the blessing of knowing means that you know what you got to work on. Imagine entering a PhD program where you enter it and your chairperson or your advisor says, all right, now you are going to get a PhD by the year 2030. Go for it. And you say, okay, well, what do I need to do? What classes do I need to take? But at 2030, you're done with the school. You either have it or you don't. Which if you don't, it feels like my life is going to end at one point. Have I worshiped God? Have I become a worshiper or not? That's what it would be like. So even though it might seem like a project sometimes to think about 5 prayers a day, Ramadan, Hajj, Sunnah prayers, hijab, sadaqah, all the things that sometimes can feel overwhelming, especially to young people who have so much on their mind that they're thinking about. The ability to just look at those things and take them also as little steps, but just know that they're there, is like the metaphor of the PhD where, okay, look, this isn't easy. Here's the classes you have to take. Here's the research you have to do. You got to figure out your thesis. You're going to have to meet with your advisor. You're eventually going to have to find a committee, et cetera, all the things that you have to do, there's a clear path. And having a clear path is everything. It's everything in any program and in life. So that is an enormous blessing. And I guess the answer to the question of what's the blessing of being in an American society, I lived in Damascus for 20 years as an American and loved it. Loved it. And I just saw that my website guy, I didn't know I don't know if he's visiting or he moved there because he's my website guy, but I saw on Facebook that he was landing in Senegal. And I was just like, oh, I want to go to Senegal. So I do have romantic feelings about majority Muslim spaces. I want to say that I do have those, and I am a realist. I know I've been to many Muslim countries. I know that every Muslim country you could go to and just be like, where are the Muslims? Because it's not just because a majority Muslim country doesn't mean it's a Islamic country in any sense of the word. But I've had a lot of blessing in being able to meet incredible Muslims in these spaces. And so I have this romantic thing. So that kind of romantic thing I do have. That being said, here in the United States, the great blessing of being able to do the work we want to do, to practice our religion, to live as Muslims. And even though there might be haters, even though there's a multi-million-dollar Islamophobic machine, there are no laws that tell us we can't live in a certain way. I'm running a nonprofit organization as a Muslim woman. There's so many opportunities here to live our faith in ways without this sort of government pressure that so many Muslim countries have. That in itself is a huge blessing. And of course, in both questions, there are lots of other blessings, but there's one for each.
Well, we are so glad that you were able to be with us, Dr. Gray. You have just summed up some wonderful tips that I think that we can use on a daily basis. Everyone, from students to faculty to staff, and those that are just interested in expanding their faith and recognizing what's within themselves. I really appreciate you saying to know yourself, because we're made in the image of Allah, and that's a life educational project.
Yeah.
To know and love ourselves. So we really appreciate it. Do you have any like lasting words that you would like to share with us for students around the celebration of Islam?
I'd like to invite the students to read my book, Joy Jots, Exercises for a Happy Heart. It is weekly essays, every week, a different essay that follows through the year and gives the opportunity to recognize the Islamic calendar and celebrate something every month. When I was a young mother, I really like celebrating. When I was a young mother, I literally sat down at my dining room table with a notebook and a pen, figuring out what we can celebrate every single month. And so, like, what are we going to celebrate in September? Going back to school, yay! What are we going to celebrate in October? I don't remember what I wrote way back then. But every single month, November was easy, that was Thanksgiving. In December, when my kids were little, I made up something called Make a Difference Day. And so the ability to celebrate is really important. And Islamic months have something to celebrate every single month. And so the book Joy Jots includes the Gregorian calendar, as well as the Hijri calendar, the Muslim calendar, and the Western calendar. So it recognizes all different celebrations, as well as essays around spiritual growth and things like this. So I guess as sort of something to take with, maybe a book club, maybe to be able to discuss all of those things together, or just individual reading. And anyone who wants to follow me, I'm on Instagram. I'm in Clubhouse. That's the FOMO. That's the new FOMO app there. I'm in Clubhouse, and I'm on Instagram, and of course Facebook, though none of your students care about that. And I'm on Twitter. So those are the places that I can be found, and I'm happy to have conversations with people. I teach classes at Rabata.rabata.org. My website is rabata.org, and you can get in touch with me through that as well. Take classes with me there. And I really excited about Smith College, by the way. I didn't get say that in the beginning, and I wanted to. My daughter went to an all-women's college here in Minnesota called St. Catherine's. And I remember attending the orientation and listening to some of the statistics around the importance of women's education, that it really encourages young women to become leaders in the wider community, because that ability to lead without competition in the early 20s from those young men who are like getting in there and taking those spaces means that when young girls graduate there, they see themselves as leaders, so they lead. And I really believe in this. So, yay, all of you young women who are going to be watching this and are walking into leadership. Shall you'll be able to be leaders as well, not only in the wider community, but also in your smaller Muslim communities that you come from, or that you go to, or that you end up in, or etc., and in your friend communities and all the different communities that you touch.
Can you tell us, what does Rabata stand for?
It actually means to come together. It's a verb, and if Arabs find it a little funny because it's strange to have like a website or an organization with the word like run, right? Like a verb, you know what I mean? But I wanted this root word because I wanted to expand from it different words like ribat, like rabita, like all these different words. But one of my board members told me if we do that, all these different words, people are going to be so confused. The non-Arabic speakers will be confused. So I cut that down. And now we have things like dragonflies and roboteens and daybreak. So we're using different words. But what I really touched me is, so we created this organization, all of this. And one of my historical mentors, a woman I really look up to. I say mentor like that because she's not alive, but I guess my mentor through her writings and through her life is Nana Asma'u of the Sokoto Khalifa in Nigeria or West Africa. And she had an organization called the Yantero Movement. And not recently, but about a year after we started Rabata, I was reading up on the meaning of Yantero. And what I read is that it means to come together. So I feel very blessed by this connection to Nana Asma'u through our modern organization. So,
Kim, do you have any final questions?
No final questions, but just really inspired about how you're leaving with us the spiritual growth and the different spirits that we have in our lives and celebrating those. I really want to take that and run with it and remind the students that we have something to celebrate every single day. And you talked about it monthly, but it can be done in the moment, the present, just live in the moment. And I think that can help to purify our hearts, because definitely seeing like a wonderful spirit. You must do this a lot because you just feel, it seems like your spirit is such that you celebrate a lot. So
I do. I'm always celebrating something. We have magnets. Unfortunately, the company closed down during the pandemic. It made me really sad. But there's a little company called Yay Magnets, YAY, Yay, and they have Yay everything. Yay the sun, yay pizza, yay donuts, yay morning, yay students. And that's just like my philosophy. Yay everything.
well, thank you so much. I'm going to say yay, Dr. Gray.
Oh, rhymes. I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And Tamara, it's always a pleasure and joy to be in your presence. And I'm so grateful and thankful to Allah that I had this opportunity again to meet you. I hope that we can meet again for future opportunities. So thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, rahmatullah.
So we had the wonderful opportunity to hear from Dr. Gray, and we know that we have a couple of other wonderful special guests that we will have. We have Dr. Ingrid Matson, who will be joining us, and we also have political activist Linda Saussure. And we have all of these recordings that are asynchronous, and they will be in our archives. They will be able to be accessed and used. And one thing we learned is that our students are going to develop a student-led facilitated discussion sometime in April. We're going to keep you informed when that may happen. And we're excited that that's going to be the case and that they're going to use as material for the conversation the highlights that come out of these different discussions that we've had.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And we are looking forward to see you again in our next session with our next guest. Thank you, and may Allah bless you all. Take care.